Hi guys, welcome to an episode of Coffee with Kory. My name is Kory, got my coffee here, ready to get started. Okay, so if you guys are longtime YouTube followers, you might have noticed that I've revamped my channel. I took down a lot of old content. That's because I'm ready to just completely redo the YouTube channel, start things all over from scratch to bring you fresh content, and that includes Coffee with Kory. So, I loved the name of this series, but I didn't love how kind of random and unstructured it felt when I first started it. So this is going to be the first episode of Coffee with Kory version 2.0, which is going to be a series that focuses on all things writing because it's something that's really passionate to me, and it's also something that I feel like I can bring some expertise to thanks to my education background and thanks to what I do now for my career. So without further ado, let's kick off today's episode by talking about coffee and writing, two of my favorite things. Part of why I wanted to start off with Coffee with Kory this month is because November is National Novel Writing Month. For those of you who don't know, probably a lot of you do. So you may see a lot of the hashtag floating around. It's hashtag NaNoMo or NaNoMo, National Novel Writing Month. Oh, sorry, I might have missed a WR in there somewhere. NaNoWrMo. Anyways, you don't have to know the hashtag in order to participate. Just FYI. Okay, moving on. National Novel Writing Month. So I don't know the history of this actually, but every November, everybody, especially writers, will talk about working on novels and they'll hashtag it with the hashtag that I apparently can't remember for National Novel Writing Month. And every November, it rolls up. I happen to see a random hashtag on social media that talks about National Novel Writing Month, and I think, wow, that's so cool. I should really participate in that someday. And then November comes and goes, and then next year I see the hashtag pop up again, and I think, wow, that's so cool. I should really participate in that someday. Yeah. So this year, I'm going to change that. I'm going to participate in National Novel Writing Month, and I'm just going to be real with you guys about why I've never participated, A, and B, why I think you should participate if it's something that sounds cool to you too. Maybe we can help motivate each other to actually partake in writing our novels this month. I've never participated in this practice as a writer because I have a bajillion excuses of why I shouldn't, including the fact that I don't think I could ever finish a novel. I don't think that I have the attention span for that. I also tend to tell myself ridiculous things like, there's already a million novels out there in the world, why would I write one? Who would read it? Which the number one rule of writing is never to think about that, at least when it comes to creative writing. If you're content writing, you definitely need to be thinking about who is going to be reading what you're writing. But when you're creative writing, the whole point, right, is that it's something that you are creating. It's something that, at least in the beginning stages of it, needs to just come from the creative source that's within you. And so if you start to think about like, well, who's going to read it, or why would I write it, what's the purpose of it, then it's really easy to get discouraged and to never actually participate in that project, and it tends to take a lot of the joy out of it. So if there's one tip that I could give you on creative writing, it would be to just not be worried about what other people are going to think or who's going to read it or anything like that when you first get started. Just write for you, and then the magic pieces of sharing it with people can come later, if they come at all. Maybe you need to write something that is always just going to be for you. That's okay too. But I clearly haven't been following that advice myself, so I'm going to change that this month and actually do some creative writing, which I'm excited about. So yeah, I've always just had a million excuses of why I wasn't going to participate. And then I realized in talking to a lot of my friends about their creative writing, and even in talking to some clients and like coaching them on creative writing, that all of the advice that I was giving to other people was advice that I wasn't following myself. So I'm going to change that. Before I jump into writing my novel though, I wanted to share with you guys some of my tips and tricks that help me get going when I'm trying to work on a creative writing piece, or when I'm writing on a deadline and trying to get a content piece writing done. So here are some of my favorite tips for just getting words on the page. Number one is to have a set of habits or a pattern that you do before you sit down to write. This is just like training yourself to sleep or having a morning routine that sets your day up the right way or something like that. It's the same concept, but instead you do it for yourself when you're going to write. So for me, a huge piece is having something warm to drink in my mug and having a cute mug on my desk. I don't know what it is about that, but this just makes me, like, having coffee in my mug and like my glasses on just makes me feel like a real writer. Like, it just gives me that feeling of like, I just want to like sit and write something. So if you have something that gives you that creative feeling where like as soon as you do it, you're just like, I really want to do this creative project, then do that, obviously. But when it comes to writing, the second thing that helps me a lot is setting a timer. And this is helpful, especially if I'm on deadline and I know that I need to get something done in a particular set of time. I can easily plan out how long I need to be writing for in order to make sure I get that project complete. So because I do that with deadlines, I do it the same way when I'm writing for fun and I don't have a deadline to meet, because it helps me to be in that mindset of knowing that it's time to sit down and write. There's a bunch of fun apps that you can get, including ones that already have I can't remember what the formal name of it is, but it's a certain timer method where you work for 25 minutes and then you get 5 minutes of a break and then you work for another 25 minutes. So it helps to keep your attention on the thing that you're working on, because you get short little breaks in between the kind of shorter intervals of working on stuff. I want to say it's the Pomodoro timer method. I don't know. I'll look it up and put it in the description below. But the point is that setting yourself up to have short intervals of writing can help to make sure that you are actually getting the writing done. Because if you just sit down and look at a blank page and think like, okay, I need to write a novel, it's easy to feel really overwhelmed by that and to not even know where to start. Or the other thing that I found that I tend to do is I think, okay, I'm going to sketch out this writing project, and then 4 hours later I have this like really detailed storyline on how I'm going to write my story, and then it never actually gets written because I just spent 4 hours outlining how I was going to write it, and now I'm burnt out on writing it. You know what I mean? So instead of getting stuck in those patterns, it's great to have a timer where you just put words on the page for 25 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it may be. I know Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book on creativity called Big Magic, she talks about having a set time of day too. She talks about people who get up really early, maybe before their kids wake up, or people who will set aside an hour every evening to work on a creative writing project. So having a particular time of the day can be great, but I found that trying to set a particular time of the day to write can be detrimental to me because my schedule tends to change a lot. So if my schedule changes and I'm no longer able to write during the time I normally would, I tend to use that as an excuse to just stop writing altogether. So I think just having it be something where that's a little bit more general, like I'm going to spend an hour writing every day or 30 minutes writing every day, whatever you can fit into your schedule, and then really sticking to that and using the timer to make sure you're actually writing for that period of time can be really, really great. Okay, number 3 is putting all of my devices on Do Not Disturb. Technology today is amazing. You can turn your phone on Do Not Disturb and still have it set so that anybody who is in your contacts, who's a part of your favorites, your parents, your kids, whoever it may be, can still reach you even with your phone on Do Not Disturb. So if there's an emergency, if the world starts to burn down without you, you can always get connected with those people and make sure that you're taking care of them. But it's so easy, especially when writing something like a novel, I think, to get distracted by the desire to do research or look up the right way to spell a word or something like that. And pretty soon you're just down this rabbit hole of the internet and you don't even remember what writing project you were supposed to be working on because you've come down the rabbit hole of the internet. Or if you're like me, you start thinking like, I think I'm kind of low on coffee, like maybe I should check into that. And then pretty soon you're like doing research on coffee and you're not even doing anything that's related to your novel whatsoever. So yeah, that's happened before, for sure. Okay, so put your devices on Do Not Disturb. Stay off the internet. There's a ton of beautiful, fancy apps out there that advertise that they will help you focus on writing because they eliminate all other distractions, and there's no fancy formatting bar, etc., etc., etc. But the reality is, if you want to be distracted while you're writing, you're gonna get distracted. So make a commitment, make a decision to stay focused on what it is that you're working on. Turn off as many of the distractions as you can, put on your timer, and then just write. Give yourself space and freedom to just put words on the page. Part of the benefit of technology today is that there are so many ways that you can get help with editing. There are editing programs like Grammarly, there's Facebook groups for creative writers where people will read your work for you and help give you feedback. A lot of times there are programs at local community colleges or universities where you can go in and get editing help so that the students there can get experience with editing. Like, there's all kinds of resources out there when it comes to editing, and at the end of the day, if you have the desire to write something, that makes you a writer, and you should write it and worry about editing it and making it perfect later on. Okay. Again, advice that I have not yet taken myself, but I'm going to. Part of speaking this aloud for me is to tell myself these things, to remind myself of all of this so that I will take these words to heart, but I also wanted to share them with all of you guys because they are things that I really do believe and that I tell to people when they come to me and want my advice as somebody who is a writer, but they're just, sometimes it's easier said than done, right? But I'm going to do it too. I'm going to follow through with you guys. Okay, my last note for you is to not be intimidated by language. And I know that as somebody who has studied language in college and who has a passion for it, that can sound like it's kind of insensitive or not recognizing how difficult of a thing that can be. But I want people to understand that the beauty of language and the reason why I love it so much isn't because I really like making fun of people when they don't put a comma in the right place or laughing at the fact that somebody has misused an apostrophe. The beauty of language to me is the fact that it's this universal form of expression that literally everyone uses. And it's something that tells stories, it's something that shares pieces of our worlds and our hearts with one another, and it makes me really sad when I hear people saying that they aren't writers simply because they don't have any formal training to be able to make sure that their writing is always grammatically correct. At the end of the day, the benefit of proper grammar and spelling is to make sure that the person who is reading your work can read it easily and hear the voice that you're speaking to them with without getting tripped up on little things like commas being in the wrong place or words being misspelled or things like that. And those are all things that, like I said, an editor or an editing app or whatever can help you to fix later on down the road. The piece that nobody else can write is your ideas and your voice. And so if you are skipping out on writing just because you're afraid of being judged because your writing may not be perfect, that makes me sad as a writer and as an editor, because at the end of the day, one of the most rewarding things I think as an editor is taking a piece of writing and going through it and fixing the little tiny errors that would normally trip somebody up while reading it, and then getting to see the revised version and getting to hear the beautiful flow of it and getting to connect with whoever's idea it was that sent it to me in the first place, and getting to see them light up with that joy of realizing that now that this is something that they can share with people. This is a piece that they wrote, that they created. It's a piece of them, but it's also a piece of art that can go out into the world and just live on its own, and that's really, really rewarding and really, really fun. So the 3 things that I would leave you with when it comes to writing are: number 1, build habits that help you get into your writing mode. Number 2, use a timer and do not disturb mode on your devices so that you actually have time and space to just write. And number 3 is don't be intimidated by perfection. You can totally go into creative writing with just an idea. You don't need to have formal training for it. You don't need to have the cutest mug from the bookstore. You don't need to have any of those things. You just need you, your brain, your mind, and the willingness to put your words onto a piece of paper. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I hope that you guys are going to participate in National Novel Writing Month. I will continue to share with you my journey with writing over the next few weeks, and Coffee with Kory will be back with another episode in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this episode, please hit the thumbs up button. Please comment below with what you are working on with your writing projects currently. I'd love to hear from you. I also am always here as a resource if you ever have writing projects that you want edited or if you want feedback on. I love to do that for people. And last but not least, if you want to watch more Coffee with Kory episodes, please hit the subscribe button so that you get notified when they come out in future weeks. Thank you guys so much. Bye. Happy writing.